Well, it is always my great pleasure to bring Larry Goldberg onto the scene on a Friday night when Tesla actually was ahead. We actually made a little progress today. $1.44 or something, Larry.
Big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the week was up too. And I know you don't care about the future. Yeah. But I think, we'll have, you mentioned the other day, you think it's going to be a little rough sledding from now until the 8th because of all the stuff that's coming up. I did a show this morning where I talked about some of the, maybe the positive catalysts that might be between now and the 8th that could kind of change that because we've got a lot of stuff going on. We might have a beat on the earnings call. Even with the lower unit sales numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that it's I'm very happy about the energy. I'm very optimistic about the energy numbers.
Right.
And I think that will have an impact. The energy numbers aren't as great as they're going to be because there's a very large contingent income.
Right.
With each delivery, and it generally takes a year to get onto the books.
Mm-hmm.
And we're about 2 quarters away from seeing, the large numbers come through. But once they start accumulating and coming through, it's going to be very, very good, in my view. So we may be, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, I thought it would be kind of fun. I think you and I both are appreciating AJ. Somebody who does really good work in terms of analyzing this kind of stuff. And he just put out a 30 or 28 piece show on X. So I've just incorporated it. I have, I'm going to do my best here to share my screen and see if that pops up fairly fast. Probably won't, and I'll have to.
It's right there. It's right there.
Is it showing?
Yeah. It's
good. I wish it was
for me. Put it in this display mode because right now.
There you go. Now I can see it too. All right, good. So Larry, he starts out on his first slide. He says he's expecting 421,000 vehicle sales.
Yeah.
The street is still at 445, but we've got a couple of people coming in around 415. I haven't looked at Troy Tesla recently, but I'm guessing he's going to be down around here. How do you like these numbers? What do you think?
I like them very much. AJ is very, very accurate. He does the work. Now Troy also does the work, and there's a variation from quarter to quarter. AJ is very competitive about his work, and that's fine. I mean, the two of them they mix like oil and water, really.
Yes, they are not good.
Which is a pity because they're both very, very hardworking guys. And each bring their own perspective. But I'll tell you, I like AJ's analysis. I think the numbers I think we'll be at the 420 mark.
All righty. Well, then he goes on, though, and he says that he thinks that the average vehicle selling price will actually increase. So from 43.4 to 43.9.
Yeah, I think that's a very, I think it's a modest improvement that he's allowing for. There's several factors there. The pricing, of course, of the Model S Model Y is the most important component.
Right.
But there's also the Cybertruck impact.
Right.
So given both of those, both the modest increases in the Y and the relatively significant sales of the Cybertruck, I think that it's not surprising that there's a modest increase. Okay. And I haven't done the numbers, but this does not sound wrong to me.
Okay. And then I think he actually talks about the Cybertruck contribution, nearly $1 billion being the main ASP driver of this increase that he's talking about.
Yep.
Obviously, when they cost over twice as much as the average, close to 3 times as much as the average, it's going to have an impact.
Yeah. And it's going to have a real impact next year. I mean, the price is going to go down by $25,000, we think.
Right.
We don't know where they're going to land. I know that they're struggling to bring the cost down. They're working very hard at bringing the cost down. I think they're trying to put off the founder, put off the ending of the founder program for as long as they can. I mean, I'm just very pleased to have been a founder, have the founders edition. I think it's worth what I paid for it. But it has to end shortly, and we'll probably see a slight pullback a fairly significant pullback in the average selling price.
Well, of course, the numbers are going up as the price goes down. So if we sell, right, 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month, at these lower prices, then it'll still have a pretty good impact on these numbers in future quarters. All right, let's go to the next one here. He says that the Foundation Series Cybertrucks sell at about 25% above the, I'm having a hard time reading it here, above the S's and X and the 3 and Ys respectively. So at 25 more than the S and X, 42 above the 3s and Ys. And that's how he, came to his conclusion.
Right.
Okay. So then we go from there to, this is automotive revenue, therefore, will increase quarter over quarter now, not last year's second quarter versus this year's second quarter, but second quarter over the first quarter, about an 8% total increase in revenues quarter over quarter. But we can look back and see that it would still be well under the June quarter from last year.
That's right.
Right. So we go from there. He thinks credit revenues will increase by 3%. Now, I have no idea how he comes up with that, Larry.
What does he say?
He's saying
you may want to put the slides on display mode so we can see it larger.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
This is a view.
Yeah, in
slideshow view.
Slideshow view. Okay.
Yeah, that will give us. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, that's so much nicer. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, I don't understand what he means by the credits revenue.
He's talking about CFO commented. Here we go. That I have to move us again. I can't see.
Oh, I see. No, he's right. Yep, yeah, I see. These are credits. What is it? Z credits. These are the credits that they earn from the guys who fall short in EV deliveries.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah.
Interesting, though, that he's able to make some kind of an estimate. I'm curious as to where he finds.
Well, he's looking at EV sales from the other OEMs, both in Europe and the US. And these OEMs have to buy credits because they lack the deliveries of EVs. And so there's a price to pay for that. And so, but I'm not sure there's a quarter by quarter relationship between the credits earned and the amounts paid, or the revenue recognized.
Right.
And I think that may be an issue. So we have never been able to accurately project these quarterly earnings. I haven't checked his track record of projecting his EV records. And, it's a very volatile number. It can change by $200-300 million.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's what he's showing here. It's, and now he's showing it fairly regular here. But last June quarter, it was only 282, and he's looking at 455. Right. So that's a significant.
Well, the truth is, the second quarter is typically. No, he's got September. Last year was 344, which was a low quarter, but September was the third quarter was even lower. Interesting.
Yeah.
My experience is that the June quarter, well, look at the September quarter last year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is I don't know how he's coming to this. All right, let's see. So now we have leasing revenue increasing 8% quarter over quarter. And that number is a lot closer to June of last year, as Tesla has put more emphasis on the leasing possibly. I don't know his thinking here, because he didn't say why he thinks it'll be up. Oh, he says by more attractive deals. Yeah.
Because of the leasing program that they announced, which was quite significant.
Right. And I'm hearing some, people talking about that it may be even picking up, right? And also the new lower interest rate might be impacting sales. Just again, not anything gross, anything that's, coming from real stats, but just individual conversations that people have been having. Okay, then we've got total automotive revenue to increase 8%, quarter over quarter. But interestingly, it's only really $2.5 billion down from last year's same quarter. By the time you add the increase in the average selling price and a little bit of money from these other revenues, it's not that far off.
Yeah, it's the ZEV credits that are doing it here.
Yeah.
So I think ZEV credits is zero emission vehicles. The ZEV credits are really driving a very significant proportion of this. And if he's wrong on these ZEV credit bets, then there's going to be a significant decline in that number.
Yeah, we could be looking at a couple $100 million maybe off on this one.
Yeah.
All right. So then we have energy storage, which is what we've been talking about. He's showing a big increase in energy storage deployments, 35% quarter over quarter. And looks like compared to last June, about a 60% increase, maybe 6 times 4.
Right. And here I would caution everybody's expectations. Because the gross revenue, sorry, let me rephrase it. The gross kilowatt hours delivered, megawatt hours delivered, kilowatts, long behind us. But the gross megawatt hours delivered could well be up very substantially. But that does not mean the revenue recognition in the quarter will be up as much as the deliveries are up.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that there are always very large reserves against performance after delivery, upon delivery, which only get recognized the year, over a 12 to 24 month period.
Yes.
That's what I mentioned at the beginning of the call.
Right.
So I do think that he may be as much as 500 million or more
off.
Too high, yeah. And it could be as much as $1 billion too high.
Yeah. Now, again, he's he does these kinds of things carefully. I'm pretty sure he understands the bookkeeping aspect of it. We get those Q10s or we get those Q10s that tell us how much is in reserve, and with some explanation. Yeah.
Randy, I wrote a very long article on this, and I actually exposed those particular paragraphs out of the Q10.
Oh, okay.
And I did an analysis of that reserve buildup. And for that reason, I would caution you that this number may be as much as $1 billion too high.
Okay. All right. Okay. Be interesting to see how that turns out, Larry. Believe me, I know you do extremely careful work also. All right, let's go to the next one. Why isn't it going down? I have to keep moving us around.
You should be able to just press the down arrow key, and it should.
I thought so, yes, and I pushed that, and for some reason it didn't go. All right, so energy storage pricing remains flat quarter over quarter. Yeah, I don't think I've heard any significant drops this quarter. Yeah, so this is then how he comes out with his energy storage revenue per kilowatt hour.
Yeah, again, the energy storage revenue per kilowatt hour is not a simple energy storage delivered and revenue earned.
Right.
again, because of those reserves that are set up.
We'll have to, we'll be able to go back, like you say, and check his work here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pushing the down thing, and for some reason it is not working. All right, energy generation and storage revenue increases 30% quarter over quarter to new all-time high of 2.1 billion. And you're saying that might be $1 billion too high.
I don't know. I don't understand energy generation
versus,
but
let's go back to here.
I think
that's automotive there, this one.
Energy storage deployed.
Oh, that's energy storage deployed, Larry.
Oh, this is megawatt hours deployed. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Okay.
Right.
I misread that.
Me too.
I see these are megawatt hours. But what's 5,461,000?
That's megawatt hours deployed. Yeah.
You know what? Excuse me.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Talking out of my hat. Yeah. All right.
I missed it as well. All right, let's go back to then here becomes the actual energy number going from 1.6 last quarter to the dollars to 2.129. Does that fit closer to your analysis, Larry, or is it still too high?
No, I think that my sense is that that is more than possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that may well. I'd have to do the numbers. I'm doing them off the top of my head right now. If storage really increased by that much, then it's more than possible. So let's reserve our judgment on that.
Right. Okay. All right. Now we'll go to service and other revenue. So that's been inching up, and he's suggesting that it will inch up again by just 4% though, quarter over quarter. But that is, we want to compare it to last June. Well, it's only a couple of $100 million higher, 225 million higher than last year. Have you any thoughts on the service revenues, Larry? Is that?
Service revenue is really hard to predict. It does tend to fluctuate with new sales because service revenue new sales do have an impact somewhat on service revenue. The other thing that has a big impact on service revenue is charging. So that's a persistent increase quarter over quarter as the fleet grows. And that's probably as responsible as anything to the increases. So this is not a bad, I'm aligned with this, very aligned.
Okay, all right. Now we've got total revenues. That would just be a matter of adding it all up. And so when he gets to his total revenue number, again, comparing it to last June, it would be down only 1.7 billion from last June. So in terms of overall revenue, but up from the first quarter. So again, this is just a matter of adding it all up. Thoughts?
That's a surprise that we would see such a big jump from last quarter. And I think the vulnerability here are the ZEV credits.
The ZEV credits, yeah.
I think that's the vulnerability. I think that there may be some energy vulnerability. Look, this is an optimistic view.
Okay, all right, okay. And I'm going to try to keep that number. Keep that number.
We should treat this as kind of the high end potential.
Okay.
But I'm very hesitant I need to be cautious because AJ's has been so close to the number in the past.
Yes.
So he's done some work on that ZEV credit thing, but honestly, the way ZEV credits are recognized doesn't really track to the core sales.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for my reserve on that.
I totally get it. Okay, then he's got vehicle production cost. Increase is driven by one-offs. I have to admit, I had a little trouble figuring this one out. Cybertruck ramp. So, okay. So Cybertruck ramp and new M3 Fremont ramp and Berlin disruptions contributing to slightly higher cost of goods in the second quarter. On average, this be average.
Yeah, again, he's working on feel and instinct, which by the way is pretty good for him.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at that. I'm surprised that it's such a small increment. My sense of it is that it's going to be higher. I think the Cybertruck ramp is costly and more costly than he's allowed for. This is a tough call. This is a very tough call, a very tough quarter. And considering that he's been consistently more accurate than I am, who am I to criticize this number? But I would say that the numbers on, at the least conservative call on cost.
And then Jeff Lutz, of course, he's of the belief that there will be a continuous 2% savings per quarter across the established lines. That would certainly, based on what Elon has said about the price of batteries, would not be a shock if we saw that
Right.
the existing Ys and 3s and et cetera would have a 2%.
Let's play that out. 2% would be about 0.7 billion. So that would take us down to 36.2 billion, which means that it's almost $1 billion of additional cost that he's allowed because of those ramps.
Right.
That seems to be reasonable. It's not unreasonable. And a lot depends on how much they have to recognize in terms of manufacturing cost in the Cybertruck, the space used in the, because this is the first full quarter of Cybertruck deliveries, right?
Right.
So again, this is one of these imponderables. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I figured out why my down arrow wasn't working. So I guess the down arrow doesn't work when you're in the other mode. All right. This is the cost reduction primarily driven by lower battery cost. Okay, there we are. So he is looking at the battery cost being a big factor. This is the implied average.
SNX, this is SNX only.
SNX only, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Cybertruck delivers first-time positive gross margin, he thinks, in the second quarter, I guess because of the high value, the high dollar amount being charged. Obviously, a lot of detail on this one.
Right. I'd have to study the detail. My instinct is the margin is a little high, or at least, yeah, the margin is very high. My instinct is that the margin is very tight right now. I read the kind of Tesla speak to mean that they weren't yet showing a margin on the product.
Oh, okay.
So this is 11.6%. That's a huge margin.
That would be good.
Yeah, 11.6%. I know some OEMs would
die for
give their firstborn for that margin. Yeah, I'm skeptical.
All right. Okay. Let's see. We've got the reduction in negative one-offs drive a bounce actually in automotive margin. So effects of leases, volatile credit sales. Yes, we just talked about that, of course. The Cybertruck ramp. And then the cost of goods advantage from batteries would also not just be on SNX, it would be across, all categories. might be seeing more revenue from the IRA, which only shows up in cost of goods. He doesn't mention the IRA once that I've seen.
Well, IRA is already factored into cost of goods last quarter.
But you have more Cybertrucks now being sold. So that would have a large...
But that's part of that IRA margin. That's part of the Cybertruck margin.
Cybertruck margin, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, this is AJ's instincts, and who am I to criticize them? It would be a huge win, huge win to see automotive gross margin of 17%.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, we're back to June of last year almost.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a, I suppose the stock could go up based on that. Let's see. Margin increase across all automotive models, excluding leasing and credit. So showing from 24.1 to 24.9.
All right.
But pretty much the same, pretty darn close though to what it's been for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Not far off at all. Yeah, yeah. All right. Then we've got now what does he mean here?
This is automotive gross profit after you add back the leasing and the credit.
Right.
And that's, you know, that's not a number we track.
Right. Okay.
Automotive gross profit, including leasing, but not credits.
Right. All right. So that's coming in at 18.1, which would be the lowest ever, maybe, or at least for a very long time.
Yeah.
Energy storage ramp efficiency gains and decreasing battery costs drive record margins on the batteries, he's thinking. So that's something that I had.
No, I'm aligned with him 100%.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I'm wondering if they may not even be higher.
Even more. Okay. All right. That would
And
be...
it may be that it takes another quarter to really come through, but I think this is I think this is on target, at least on target. I mean, this is very, very possible. We may even see bigger than this.
All right. Then we have gross margin stable quarter over quarter for the first time in 7 quarters. So stability would be nice, huh? So
right.
Nice.
I mean, this is building a platform. This is building a platform because, you know, we're only going to see significant improvement on Cybertruck margins.
Right.
Now, to offset that is we'll end the, you know, the foundation program.
Right.
And that will have a very significant impact. So I think that they're going to run that program. I would have to believe they're going to run that program for at least another quarter, at least until 8/8, if not beyond.
They said, I saw the other day where they were releasing, they were sending out the invitations at the end of 2022. So they've still got all of 2023 and half of 2024 to go through before they get back to the beginning.
Right, right.
My wife would like to see them get all the way through those, Larry, because, you know, we're not going to pay.
Right. I want to tell you, if the number of thumbs up signs and photographs taken of my Cybertruck were to count, I think I've been paid back for my foundation series investment already. I mean, today, you know, we drove all the way from North Carolina to Orlando.
That's right. That's right.
Over yesterday and today, and we stopped the evening in you know, in South Carolina and on the road. And I mean, no matter where we were on the road, stop, you know, at supercharger stations, you name it, we just get, you know, photographs being taken, stares, thumbs up. It's amazing.
That's great. So much fun. Okay, then we've got R&D expenses reaching all-time high. Of course, this will only affect cash flow. Am I right on that, Larry? It won't actually affect.
Yeah, R&D is going to hit, is going to be part of the overhead. So
Oh, it will be part of overhead. Okay.
So Tesla, unlike most other auto
CapEx.
companies, expense R&D in the month that it's in the quarter that it's spent.
Right.
And many other auto companies will capitalize it and then pay it off or charge it off over a 4-year period,
Right.
which is allowed. But Tesla write it off directly, and it's going to be high. It may be higher than this 1.228 billion. I think he's made an argument for it. I haven't read the whole argument, but I mean, it's going to be reaching its peak. It's going to be reaching its peak.
Now, Larry, I'm going to guess though, is it 100% though? Because some of their R&D would be really truly CapEx and couldn't be.
They write off 100%. This number here is part of the total overhead.
Okay.
The overhead number comes in, 3 components. Right. This is one of the components, and this is written off 100%.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Then we've got SG&A, and he's figuring that'll decrease significantly because why? Because they got rid of 14% of their employees. Just saw a headline just before we went on, Larry, where the estimate is from, I'm forgetting who it was, Yahoo maybe, was a 14% drop in employee count.
The one thing I will say is that very often there's a write-off of programs closed.
Right.
When that happens, and that adds in a quarter in which the programs are closed, it adds to the total SG&A or the total cost of business.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see how much is offset of the saving, at least in the first quarter. But in the quarter after quarter, we'll see this reduction.
Right.
It's a good reduction to have.
Mm-hmm. Then Tesla headcount restores historic efficiency. He's assuming a 10% again. What I saw was that it went from 140 to 120. I'm not remembering the second number, unfortunately, but 14%, whatever that is.
Well, I mean, you can see in this graph that, traditionally it's been in the 4.5 to 5%.
Right.
And in March quarter went up as high as 6.5. And now you can understand why Elon took the action that he took.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a first principles guy, and the principle are, listen, more than 5.5% you can't afford.
Right.
And so he took a sledgehammer to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And then small increase in expenses. So very, very small. Of course, we know that they run lean and mean. And of course, they had not a very strong quarter. So expenses.
Well, this reflects the last 3 slides, adding the last 3 slides together.
Right.
This is the R&D plus the SG&A plus the restructuring plus other expenses.
Right.
I just don't see where he allowed for restructuring. I didn't see that.
Okay.
Go back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
SG&A before restructuring. There's no restructuring, and then go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So I don't see a slide that factors in restructuring.
Yeah, he says. So I think he says including restructuring. Yeah.
Yeah, but he hasn't got a separate slide showing how much the restructuring is, but we can calculate it. There's 2.538 billion. Go back 1 slide.
Yep.
Back another slide. That's 1.249. Go back one more slide.
Okay.
That's 2.95, and go back one more slide. No, it's not there. So it doesn't give us the restructuring, but go forward to where we were. Yeah. He's got no restructuring in there. And I would imagine that we're going to end up with a couple of 100,000, 300,000, to between 200 and 300,000 of restructuring, 300 million of restructuring.
Okay, and then interest income he thinks goes down a little bit. Not sure why that would be, but
well, interest rates are slightly lower, and there's going to be less cash in the bank.
Okay, all right, okay. And then interest expense about the same, which is really, really low and doesn't move the needle much anyway.
I think this is mainly Chinese debt, if I recall.
Is it? Okay. And then other income, again, pretty insignificant.
Actually, it's not Chinese debt. I think it's some paper, some long-term paper that they held. Not long-term paper. I think it's short-term paper.
Does this interest?
Finance paper. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's nothing.
All right. And this is a very small amount also on the other income expense. And he mentions that it's hard for him to really figure this one.
He's right. He's right. You can't foretell.
And same thing on effective tax rate. He takes a pass on this one too and says, look, he throws his hands up. It's really hard for me to know, but he puts a number in at roughly 18% of the earnings.
Yeah.
But he interestingly doesn't actually give us the bottom line, Larry.
Well, we could impute the bottom line. I can do that. I can't do that online, but
right.
I think that it's interesting. It's my own prediction, not projection. I haven't done a projection, but my prediction is we're going to be in the 60-cent range. Way down from the 80, low 80-cent range.
Right.
And I think that it's going to impact the stock. His numbers actually lead me to believe that maybe I'm too cautious. May even be in the 70-cent range. I'd be fascinated to see the number he comes up with. Yeah, because it's probably going to be more accurate than mine.
I was just so surprised to see that he didn't give us the final number after all that work. Just give us one more slide.
Well, you can calculate it quite.
Oh, I know. And I kept saying I was going to do it. And I have been running out of time. The last 2 days, you said you've been busy. I did 5 hours of video yesterday. And this morning might have been worse because I spent a couple hours with Warran. So yeah, it's been crazy.
Nice compliments from several people on the road for you.
Oh, well, thank you. It was about the shirts, right?
No, but people would walk up to me and say, hey, you're Larry. Yeah, you're on the show with Randy. Such a good guy. So
that's good.
Several comments.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad to hear that, Larry. Switching gears. I thought it would be a lot of fun, and I know people don't like us to get political on this channel. I'm going to claim that this is not political. What we're going to do is not political. This is about issues, not candidates. And we had a lot of news made the other day when the All In guys had their conversation with President Trump. And in the course of that conversation, there was 5 issues that they said made headlines, and I thought it would be fun to talk about these 5 issues. So I thought the most intriguing, probably impossible to do, but interesting to contemplate would be the elimination of the income tax and the corporate tax in favor of tariffs. And some people have said that you would have to charge a 70 to 80% tariff on every single item that comes into the United States in order to get to that number. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound that bad. Sounds like it might work out for me. Larry, the only thing that I haven't thought it through in great detail, you said you have been thinking about it. The one thing that I thought about is it's so hard to know the impact. So hard to know. This is almost like trying to predict the rain in Florida. Okay. It's so dynamic. If you charge 70% or 100% here, how does that change the dynamics of those imports? Maybe they don't get, maybe that item can't be imported at all anymore, so there's no revenue. If you reduce and eliminate all income tax and corporate tax, what does that do in terms of the income for people and corporations? And what does it do for the rest of the world as they scream and yell about us eliminating?
I think that it would prove to be politically and diplomatically impossible to implement, and perhaps even economically difficult, because it would almost immediately put a huge percentage of imported products into unaffordable categories. And I'm not talking about unaffordable about the man in the street. I'm talking about manufacturers, resellers, retailers. I mean, the dynamic of it would be explosive.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the question of, relationships with all your trading partners.
Right.
Your relationships would fall apart immediately. We'd be back to the 18th century and early 19th century. And markets would close for us right away, and really the financial markets would close for us right away. And the United States, is highly dependent upon the financial markets. I think the global financial markets would fall apart. There would be such reciprocity and such angst and difficulty. So I understand the motivation or the politics behind it. It sounds good. Let's return to the good old days, pre-First World War, no tax. We paid everything through
Tariff. Yep.
And the federal government was a different animal.
Yeah.
The federal government was a very light touch on people's lives global, throughout the nation, notwithstanding everything that happened before 1913. But there's some very good things you can think about. It would shrink the federal government quite dramatically, which I think is the underlying, motivation. Because there's no way you could equitably or figure out how to charge tariffs in such a way that everybody, is unaffected. And then, of course, there's the distribution of income. You have a lot of people in this country, 30% of the country that are living, that are highly dependent upon government transfers.
Right.
Highly dependent on government transfers. And whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, and whatever the reason that happened,
mm-hmm.
If you immediately turn on the tariff switch, you're not going to be able to provide those benefits. I don't think you're going to earn enough money. But, even if you earn enough money, the disparity in income then just jumps to, some gigantic portion, because income tax is a way of leveling, people. It doesn't level, but it certainly reduces the take-home income of those people who are not at that, poverty level.
Yeah, it's a progressive tax.
It's meant to be.
Helps.
It's meant to be as not as progressive as some would want it to be. But listen, I remember the United Kingdom when we had 110% income tax for the very wealthy, and it was a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And the country fell apart, and it struggled to recover ever since, although it made some very significant inroads under Thatcher. That annoys a lot of people, but that is the reality. I mean, the country was devastated, absolutely devastated. I spent a lot of time in England, visiting London in those days, and before and after, and you don't want to be there
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very skeptical of it. And I understand it. I'm skeptical of it. and I don't think that it will be possible to implement.
Yeah, I think that there's absolutely no way possible, this would be me, that you could do it fell swoop. You can't do, okay, starting tomorrow, it's all tariffs and all the income tax goes away. That's absolutely 100% impossible. But I could imagine maybe if there was some really thoughtful individuals that got together and said to the world, here's what we're going to do over the next 10 years. And we're going to increase tariffs this much a year, and we're going to decrease income tax this much each year. And in terms of redistribution of income, a lot of people are very interested in what is going to actually happen over these next 10 years, Larry, in terms of, people working, less, maybe requiring universal basic income. I don't agree with that, but it may be that there is some issue, a transitional issue at least, with regard to people having enough employment. So there's going to be a lot of.
What comes first? Randy, what comes first? If you are able to generate that level of income that you can cover this enormous deficit and provide universal basic income, then the world changes.
Yeah.
But if you say you're going to move to tariffs and you're going to do it thoughtfully, well, you can be as thoughtful as you like, but all the problems that I've talked about over 10 years, it could never happen over 10 years. Now, if you did it over 25 or 30 years, remember, we moved from a tariff base
to
an income base over about a 30-year period.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're older than me. You'd remember.
I wasn't alive. I mean, we're talking about the beginning of the 20th century. So the chances that now the truth of the matter is that when we implemented the ability of a government to take the tax out of your payroll, that's when massive expansion of income tax occurred, massive expansion.
Yes.
And, Greenspan always said a mea culpa, I didn't realize what a terrible thing I was doing because he implemented it. Or he was a government employee responsible for doing that. So, I think that 10 years, it would never happen. And if you did it over 30 years, if we had a robotics, a true robotics revolution, then you wouldn't need tariffs.
You wouldn't need tariffs,
because the level of productivity would be such that, it would pay for itself, and you wouldn't, income tax. So I think that it's not a doable project. I do not believe it's a doable project. Quite apart from the fact that I do believe that from a principle point of view, it's a really bad idea.
In addition. All right, let's look at the H1B visa idea. So apparently President Trump was asked this before when he was president from 2016 on, and he said, no, I wouldn't want to allow green cards as a matter of course for individuals who graduated after having been here on H1B. I don't know whether the all-in guys influenced his decision on this when they had their meeting up at last week, but apparently President Trump has flipped on this 100% and now says he thinks that anybody who even gets a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree or a graduate degree, if they're here on an H1B, automatic green card upon graduation. And you think?
I think it's not enough.
I
think, we only give 100,000 visas a year. I mean, I would give 1 million. I would give 5 million.
Yeah.
I would expand that program dramatically to the whole world because, we have a population crisis in this country.
Right.
We need to expand our population. That's one reason I'm a little bit more relaxed than most people about the immigration crisis, the border crisis. Look, I think it's really bad to allow anybody and his brother into the country.
Yes.
But it's really good to have 10 million immigrants. I'm an immigrant.
Yes.
And so if you talk to any immigrant, they understand the value of immigration to this country.
Yeah.
You're all of you
Yeah.
are children of immigrants, almost without fail.
Right.
It's true that indigenous people were here, but they were immigrants as well in their own time.
Yes.
You know, they crossed the Bering Straits. Sorry, not the Bering Straits. They crossed from Europe. I mean, however they arrived, they
Right.
were immigrants. So immigration is a good thing. It is a great thing.
Yes.
But I wouldn't recommend just allowing everybody across the border.
No, me either.
But in 25 years' time, when we look back at this, 50 years' time, when we look back at this, we'll recognize that this bounce in total number of people in the country, you know, once we've solved the problem of educating the children and you know, homogenizing the nation, will have been a good thing. Now, in the interim, we're going to suffer very badly from the nature of some of the people coming. And so that's a really, really bad thing. For that reason, for all the reasons that I mentioned, population crisis, you know, the need to continue expanding the country, the need to expand wealth in the country, I would allow 1 million, 5 million, somewhere between 1 million and 5 million people a year to come into this country, if necessary, to study, but people who have graduated, who have graduate degrees,
right.
I would encourage them to come to this country. I would even pay them something, give them some fun. Look how good it's been for Australia. And I mean, it could be, look how good it's been for our country.
I'm perfectly okay with bringing in people that don't have degrees because we need that kind of labor as well. But let's select them, let's choose them, and let's let them come in legally so that they're not starting off their life here as somebody who has to be sub rosa.
Look, somebody who doesn't have a criminal record.
Yep.
And, you know, who indicates their interest and their desire to be in the country, and who has a great trade, a great degree, or a really good working record.
Right.
Let's have them all come.
Right. All right, now let's talk about the Ukraine. I know that you are not aligned with a lot of the Republicans, a lot of guys on the All In podcast. You're not aligned. You are more aligned with the Biden administration on this one, in terms of what we should be doing in the Ukraine. But what I think I understood, and I know you haven't listened to the All In podcast yet, but what I think I understood was basically they asked, and Trump agreed, that he would immediately put on the table no NATO opportunity for Ukraine on his
no NATO forces in Ukraine.
No ability for the Ukraine to join NATO. So he believes, he apparently has bought in, and I'm not saying I'm not sure how I feel on it, but he and the three, at least 3 of the 4, and maybe all 4 of the All In guys believe that the main reason Russia invaded was because of the possibility that Ukraine would be allowed into NATO.
Then more fool they. Look, I have more knowledge about Ukraine than all of those guys. I studied the history over 50 years of my life. I've been to those countries. My parents came from those countries, but more importantly, I've studied the history, and they are, particularly David is so ignorant of the history. It's staggering. Look, I believe that Ukraine should join NATO.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind. Honestly, it won't make the slightest difference to Putin. Putin is not going to make peace with Ukraine, NATO or no NATO, period. Putin is focused on conquering Ukraine, period. And he either has to lose the war or he will conquer Ukraine. There is no in between. And if you think there is, then you don't understand Russia, the Russian mind, or Putin. Sorry.
All right. So then,
Now,
we'll,
now let me just say, I'm not opposed to never having or not having during the course of this war NATO forces in Ukraine. I think that's a fair red line. I'm also okay with having very limited use of US and European weapons in striking Russia. I would say that I would limit that to striking Russian forces in rear areas that are attacking Ukraine, and some of those forces go back, a couple of 100 miles.
Right.
But I would not allow the use of NATO weapons to strike, armaments factories or rear aircraft emplacements. It's open question: is a radar 300 miles? More than 300 miles behind the front lines, is it a legitimate target? I don't want to get into the
sure.
details. Those limitations I would accept, but the issue of whether or not Ukraine can join NATO is not on Putin's bingo card. He's not interested.
Okay.
David makes a big noise about it. It has nothing to do with this battle.
So I'm not doing this to create an argument, Larry, only to create an A-B situation, just to understand where you think things are. If that were the case, if it were all about NATO, Trump gets elected, he goes to Putin and he says, this has got to end. They're buds, they're friends, or at least they were. He goes in, he gives him all of his, charm and all that, and that he says, look, we got to end this war. What do we got to do here? And one of the requirements, it wasn't going to take over Ukraine, but one of the requirements was to take NATO off the table. Would you be okay with that in order to end the war?
If I believe that Putin would stop would not attack Ukraine after this peace agreement, I'd be okay, but I don't believe that.
Okay, but but that's the question.
So, I mean, the point is, why? Let me tell you something. Donald Trump reversed American policy set by Barack Obama. In stone, Barack Obama would not deliver offensive weapons to Ukraine. Donald Trump, early in his presidency and late in his presidency, not only delivered weapons to Ukraine, but kept on stepping up what he delivered to Ukraine.
Right.
The fact that Ukraine was able to hold back the Russians was partly due directly to Donald Trump.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump, but I have to say that Ukraine owes Donald Trump a great big thank you. And did thank you. Now, I know there was this call and blah, 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 and he brought, that's fine. I mean, Biden also brought a lot of pressure on Ukraine for political reasons, I think, for his son, to get his son paid out and so on and so forth. But Trump is singularly responsible for giving Ukraine the wherewithal to survive.
Right.
And of course, Biden, once he came into power, he also, I mean, when the attack happened, he was magnificent in terms of supporting Ukraine. So when Trump sits down with his buddy Putin, no matter how much a buddy he is, Donald Trump is the master of the art of communication and negotiation. And he's not going to lie down for Putin. No. He is not.
No.
He's going to be very strong. And I do predict that if he does become president, I do predict that our policy to Ukraine will remain solid.
Right. And we'll see then. Yeah. And then the question becomes, can he end the war? And what does it take to get that done? I got one more for you, Larry. I actually had two more, but we're running out of time. You're a big fan of JFK. You are in the United States partially because of JFK. Making that your decision to emigrate here. He immigrate here. Immigrate. Yeah. Anyway,
I emigrated from South Africa. I immigrated to the
United States. Yes, okay.
And JFK inspired me to do that.
Yes, exactly. And so it turns out that President Trump had promised to declassify the information around the assassination before he entered office last time. Got into office, declassified some, but not all. And in the podcast, he said that that was because several of his senior staff had seen what was going to be declassified and said, you can't do this. You just can't. Now, President Trump says, well, now I'm telling you, I know what's in there now. And when I get back in, I will declassify the rest. And you think?
I think you will declassify it.
And is that a good thing?
Yeah. I mean, I hate secrecy in government. I hate secrecy in government. And if somebody did a bad thing, if in fact the CIA or FBI assassinated Kennedy, as his nephew says, as John Kennedy's nephew now claims, then we need to know that.
Okay.
And we need to know it. If that's true, then we need to know it urgently and importantly, much more importantly than trying to suppress it. That's all I have to say. I mean, do I believe that's the case? I hope that's not the case. But if that is the case, we need to know it. And if it is and it is critically important that we learn about it.
Good. Well, Larry, I was going to ask you about the tips, but maybe we'll do that another day. I did want to just, because we always do this with good news each night, we do at least quickly go over the market. We had the Dow down up 15. We had the NASDAQ down 32. We had the S&P down 8 and Tesla up $1.44. In the after hours, Tesla has given back 23 cents. We have got the bonds. It's not going to tell me here. It's not. Here we go. We got the bonds
up slightly,
up just slightly, only 0.3 of one basis point. And the 2-year similar, and the 3 down similar, about 3. So fairly unchanged. In fact, everything was kind of sideways today. There wasn't a lot of action across anything. Oil was down 70 cents, which had been up very regularly all week. So it took a little breather from that. Natural gas also slightly off. Gold off a lot, actually, $34. Down,
really?
down to 23.34. So that's like that's a 1.5 points, 1.5%. Silver down 4%. That's significant.
I think silver's going to plummet.
You think it's going to really take a hit, huh? Okay. And then copper down almost 3% today at 4.42. And the dollar was unch, as they say. And then Bitcoin down another 807, down to 64, pretty much even. There you go. That's all there is. That's all to report. Anything out of any of that striking?
Quiet day, but
very quiet day.
I think we're going to see a little bit of return of the Dow and a little bit lowering of the S&P. I think we're going to see a little bit of leveling out.
So a little bit of taking a little bit of the froth off of the Magnificent Six and giving it all to Tesla.
I'm not sure about that part of it.
All right. Well, Larry, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you for everything. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.
A lot of fun. Thank you, Randy.